show that runs along parallel with the Great British Sewing Bee and goes into detail of all the techniques and skills that come up because the Sewing Bee can't. And we do that because we have more time and we have our master tailor couturier, Carol Elaine, here with us. Hey, Carol, again.
Oh, hello again, Stuart.
Good to see you for, can you believe it, week 7 we're up to now.
I know. Now it seems like it's really gone fast.
Hasn't it just? And it's winter week and it's still cold here in the UK. So my flannel shirt, my lumberjack shirt is keeping me warm. And how apt for the show that we had. All things winter, so we were looking at the flannel shirt we had and a winter garment. So we had lots of things and scarves for the transformation challenge. But we'll go straight into it because your tutorial is covering most things about the flannel shirt, which they talked about in the first challenge. Is that right?
That's right. So this was like a more refined pattern matching exercise, wasn't it? Okay. So you had some larger checks, you had some smaller checks, you had some with just 2 color waves, you had a really elaborate pattern with what Raf was using and what Andrew was using. So a lot of different types of patterns. And with those, you know, they all have that complex challenge of matching a line. So really, it doesn't matter how simple or how complicated the check is, you still have to match a line specifically. So I think there was a comment made where, oh, the smaller the check, the harder it is to match. I don't know how that follows really.
That's right.
Anything is difficult to match, you know?
Yeah, Esme said when they were talking about the choices of fabric chosen, I think someone chose a small check, and didn't she say, ooh, that's going to be hard to do? Where was she coming from that point of view then?
I'm not sure. Like I said, because I got out a piece of gingham, right? Now gingham has a 1/4 inch repeat, which would qualify as a small check. And we've been making gingham, you know, gingham dresses, gingham, you know, lovely thing, chefs' uniforms out of this kind of check cotton, you know, for 50 years, and everything matches perfectly fine. But I did a tutorial a while ago about matching checks where if you have a small pattern, well, you can match every 5th or 6th check on that line and then just zip it through the machine. You know, it's all lined up. It's not complicated. Like the plaid you have on with your top there, that's a complex check. So, and the repeat is what, about 6? No, it's even more than that. The repeat's about
what's that,
8 inches.
8 inches, yeah.
It's about 8 inches. Yeah. Yeah. So if you make an error with it, you know, with an 8-inch repeat, you've got to go up another 8 inches to fix it, right? If you make a cutting error. Where if you're working with a smaller check and something goes offline, well, you can just move it a 1/4 inch and you're back on track. So it's easier to recover with a smaller check. So I'm not sure what she meant by that.
I see. Okay. Just from my point of view as a beginner sewer, or certainly into dressmaking, the whole plaid, is it plaid with a D? Is that how we say it? Plaid?
Plaid? Yes, a plaid is it's kind of a warp and weft graphic design.
And is there a specific word to use? Is it plaid or check or tartan? I don't. Or the three? Do they have separate histories, or are they linked in some way, or is it just the way the fashion industry's gone, or the wool industry, and the words are interchangeable from?
I think each of those terms has evolved. A plaid used to refer to Scottish dress, and it used to be that the piece of fabric that you laid over the shoulder across the body, that used to be called the plaid. And that would be in a tartan check. So then you have your ancient tartans and your modern tartans, and then so you'd have, like modern, you'd have a window pane check. So it's just more a plainer fabric with that golden section that rectangle, and that's window pane checks. I think the terms kind of have woven together, if you know what I mean.
And for the sewing bee, because we've got fewer sewers, they're dropping in more of those historical moments, aren't they? So we had the whole history of the man that made the flannel shirt. That was fascinating, wasn't it?
I love that. Of course, these things, little tidbits I didn't know. It's helping. It's adding to the richness of the program.
Very much so. So there we are then. So we've got this flannel shirt, or as we sometimes call it, the lumberjack shirt. We've got plaids and pattern matching to do. Let's go then into the first tutorial that Carol's done for us, talking about this whole idea of pattern matching. And she's been very clever doing it in the miniature scale. So you're going to love this.
So here we have all our pattern pieces laid out. Starting with the front, you would cut one pair. This is the back on the fold. Here's the yoke, you would cut a pair. The stand for the collar, and the top collar itself. Now these two pieces together are called a stand and fall collar style, because quite simply the collar falls over the stand, and it covers up the stand when it's in place. Here's our sleeve, and we're looking at the crown, and you can see that one side has a steeper curve that fits into the front armhole, and in the back you have a steeper curve which is fuller and gives more room across the back. The front has this corresponding band that laps one side over the other, and a pocket. Now, let's lay these pattern pieces out, starting with the center back, which you might want a dominant part of your pattern to lie on. And that dominant pattern, or line or color, would then correspond again with the center back of your yoke, and moving up the shirt, the collar, and the stand. So all these line up so that the pattern is not interrupted when you look at the back of the shirt. The same thing applies to our side seams, because we're going to want to match those horizontally. And again, you're going to want to look at, well, do you want a dominant line there or not? Or do you want to hide the dominant pattern? The same thing goes for our center front. You can see here, the center front's going to fall on this white stripe. So I'm going to lay this small pattern out, and I'm going to use that white stripe again, so that when they join, the pattern is uninterrupted. It's tricky to do, but it can be done. Simpler than the matching the band is your pocket. We know where the pocket placement lines are going to be and what stripe they're going to lie on. So we've got a navy blue stripe here, so we would find that corresponding pattern on our cloth, and we're going to put that right in the middle, maybe use the white line to center it if that corresponds with the shirt pattern. So this is how things relate to each other. Putting the shirt together on paper, let's join the yoke to the back of our shirt, bearing in mind the seam allowances. I don't know if I've lapped this over quite enough, but at any rate, then you can take your shoulder point and you can literally walk the pattern down the armhole and say where you'd like to match your pattern. And I'm doing this because I would maybe choose to match the red stripe or the blue stripe. Now that's just on the back. Visually not as important as the front. So here we're going to join the yoke at the shoulder seam to the forepart of our shirt. And we're going to use the same exercise just to see. See if you lay it out. Here's one view of it. And if you turn the pattern piece around, you can walk through again, starting with the shoulder, and pick a point where you'd like to match your pattern. Okay, once again, it's more visually important on the front than it is on the back. Sometimes you can do both. But anyway, it's you putting these pieces together, and you're beginning to understand the relationship of how they work together and where you might match and take advantage of the dominant design in your pattern. And I think this is a really excellent exercise to go through, because if you can understand things using this scale, then you got a bit of a head start. You know, you're better placed than to work with your actual size pieces of pattern.
So we can see the finer details there of the pattern matching. Let's talk about the contestants for this round, for the pattern challenge round, and talk about how they dealt with the pattern matching, because clearly Fari struggled there because she didn't finish. Did you get the impression she didn't finish because she was spending so much time pattern matching, or was there a different reason?
That was fascinating to me, because she had quite a simple check to match, you know, the blue and the black. That was really easy. And I thought that's one thing which reflects the strategy of Serena. Because Serena, for me, in the pattern challenge, she has come out with this: all I'm going to do is I'm going to sew beautifully, and I'm going to select a fabric that doesn't put any pressure on me at all, which is what she did. Rebecca did the same. And so did Fari. And so did Damien. So they were simple checks, 2 colorways, that was it. We talked before, Fari seems to have a different speed to her processing.
Yeah.
So, and she fell way, way behind. So something happened there where she wasn't able to, you know, cope with the cutting.
Yeah, because it was almost, because we haven't seen that from her since week 1 or week 2, have we? Where she had, you know, struggled. So it was quite interesting to suddenly go back to that again. It was like a complete, rather than, you know, 3 steps forward, 1 step back. This was like 4 steps, 5 steps back, wasn't it?
And I think the thing that complicated this, Stuart, was the fact that there were 17 pieces.
Right.
So if you were cutting these things individually, that would have just added to the time. And it's easy to, under pressure, even though you've chosen a simple fabric, to just get bamboozled by the fact that you've got all these white pieces of paper and you've got to match them all up. The cuffs, you know, the collar, the undercollar, the stand, the stand backing, you know, the 2 yokes, 2 fronts, you know. So it can get complicated because of the sheer number of things you have to cut.
To give her credit as well, because we know how hard it is for some of these patterns, do you think this burrito method might have caused her an issue as well to be behind? I didn't fully understand that method. It seems an interesting way. Is that a general way of doing a lumberjack shirt?
I learned something new.
Oh.
Never heard of that. It's one way of doing it, but in order for the burrito method to work, you have to have a very deep yoke, which they had, because the whole of the back and the front has to roll up into a little parcel, and it has to fit in between. Now, if you were making a commercial business shirt, you wouldn't be able to use that method.
Well, I think even my yoke is very thin. What is that, about 2-3 inches? 2?
Yes. So you couldn't use that method.
Right.
Now it is tricky, but and that's one tutorial I suppose I could have done. But if you sew that sandwich where you have the back, and then you have 1 layer of yoke on one side, the other layer of the yoke on the other side, and you sew the 3 together, and then you bring the 2 up, and then you sew the front on, right?
Okay.
If you just look at it and pin things in place, there is enough room to reach through, to pull the half of the yoke through and stitch it. There's room to do that, even in the tiniest of yoke. The burrito method, as I said, it would only work if you had a very deep yoke.
Do you think, because also Raf struggled this round and struggled with the pattern, do you think that could have been one of the big things for Raf? Because 17 pattern pieces, that's going to be hard even for me, as English is my first language. Raf, English is it. So maybe that had an impact on Raf, because for the first time we saw him struggle in this round, didn't we?
Yes, we did. He decided to put the yoke on the bias, which I think the direction said they wanted that matched.
Yeah.
So he did that, and I think probably partway through he realized he'd done something which wasn't right. And then, of course, when you're doing something on the bias, it's stretching. So then that affects the neck edge, that affects how things fit on the shoulders, and that might have just gone down the line and exacerbated itself.
But
and then, of course, he had a very big check as well,
yes,
a very big, colorful check, didn't he? I like the fabrics he chooses. I have to say that's one thing about Raf that makes everything he does so colorful and theatrical.
Yeah, but that yoke on the bias did look good though. When they turned it round and we saw it worked,
oh, yeah.
didn't it?
Oh yeah. Oh, it's dynamite. And
go on.
I think I remember a comment said, well, what's the point? You know, I think maybe it was Esme saying, well, what's the point if everything matches and you can't even see it? You know, well, there is a point to the yoke and to have it lined because it, you know, it conceals all the seams. So there is a point to it. And also you get the shoulder angle and it just sort of fits better and it sits better on the body, you know.
So those two seem to struggle in that round anyway, but with regard to pattern and pattern matching, the others breezed through it, didn't they?
Yeah, I was really impressed by that, in fact. You know, that most people, they decided to line up horizontally, the front and the back, and then their front band. And then the yoke was just fell into place, you know, vertically. So, yeah, very, very well done.
And as you said, Serena, Rebecca, Damien went for a simple 2-color check plaid. Andrew, let's focus on Andrew because he took that lovely brown and blue. It was almost a tartan-esque check. Yeah, it wasn't a classic check, you know, with just squares. It was a more of an elaborate fabric, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, rich hues in that one. No, I really like the fabric. And I felt very bad for Andrew because he had out his, you know, his grid and he was very careful how he looked like he was very careful cutting everything out, but he got one of the 4 parts a little bit offline and then everything went bad from then on. But I think I just love the way he forced the plaids to match on the front band, you know, which gave him a little gate between the top button and the second button. But I thought, well done, mate. You saved it. You saved the day. I mean, you didn't save yourself, but you saved the plaids.
Well, perhaps we should give him the trophy then this week, should we? The greatest save.
Yes, the greatest save. Good point.
Yeah.
Andrew gets the greatest save trophy. Good one.
Oh, that's good. Well, there we are. We lost him, I know, this round. So if he can have that as a consolation.
Good for him. Yeah. I'll miss Andrew. He had a theatrical flair, and I think he had a good commercial sense for things. I mean, you may not agree. Probably nobody would agree with that, but I think he could work in the industry. You know, I think he had some very good ideas. That lovely little coat he did in Children's Week. You know?
Oh yes, yeah. Well, that's the pattern matching. Let's move on to the second tutorial then, where we talk about the quilted yoke. I mean, I've got, this is brushed cotton and it's lovely and warm, but to have a quilted yoke, that's just luxurious.
Well, you know, I come from Michigan and it's cold in the Great Lakes, you know, and the weather changes every 5 minutes and it can get brutal in the winter. So sometimes I would make a lumberjack shirt and I would quilt the whole of the interior. But if you can get the back of the neck warm, and if you get some of the 4-part warm, it really gives you a whole different garment. So I thought,
who have you got there then? Is that something that you've?
Oh, so this is actually the tutorial that I use. So this is this is a commercial shirt.
Yeah.
And again, I chose this because it has that simple check, you know, that it's just about a centimeter, you know, repeat.
Yeah.
But back here, what we have is a quilted yoke. And I've set up the pattern for the quilting here. And then in between, I have a cotton batting, a domette, which is really plush and lovely and fuzzy. And so those 3 layers then would just go back into the yoke shape like
Oh,
that.
look at that.
And you see there,
Yeah.
it just adds that extra layer of warmth for the winter.
Don't we need it at the moment? I mean, heat
Yes,
in the UK
I know.
even. Though
It's
I think
gonna be June. It's gonna
I
be
know.
June.
I'm normally in the shorts by now and a top, but no. Okay, let's go straight in then and take a look at this tutorial on how to do the quilted yoke.
Now we're going to take a closer look at the yoke and the relationship here in close-up to our stand and fall collar. This one is a button down, so it's got a very close fit, not a whole lot of overlap. But we locate the center with this button and we can see how the blue stripe there carries right down into the body. And this particular yoke is cut on the bias, gives it a little extra personality. So is the top collar, by the way, cut on the bias. We're going to make a pattern of this piece by pinning through the main construction lines. So we have our shoulder, our sleeve line, and the bottom of the yoke. It's a lot easier to do this. I'm working on a large tailor's ham because of the curves in the shirt and the curves on the body. So here we are. We have a store-bought shirt and we're going to make a pattern.
Okay.
So here's the pattern. I've already made it and I've marked up my grid. There's the pattern, construction lines, and I've added a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now I'm going to locate the center of my yoke by folding it in half both ways. And there's my center point just there. And now, with the aid of this pad that shows the horizontal lines, I'm going to use a pattern master tool here, and I'm going to draw a line through the center at a 45-degree angle. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch system here. I'm going to take 6/4 of an inch, and I'm going to use an 1.5 inch grid. And I'm going to set this up going both ways, left to right, and then again setting up the right angles so that my whole grid is complete. Now you can choose any number of paddings to go in as an interlining. This one here is a heavier domette. It's very soft, it's very pliable. Another option would be to use some quilt batting, which has a little bit different body to it. And what we're going to do then is sandwich this interlining, the batting, the warm bit, in between our quilting grid and the lining. So we're going to be sewing on the machine through these grid lines, and then the decorative stitch is going to show up on our lining. And I just so happen to have one completed here. So you can see I've chosen to use a thicker domette. I've got a navy lining and I'm using a red decorative stitch. That's going to merge in well with the design of the shirt. And now all that remains to do is to cut this out, and then we'll have a warmer addition to the shirt. Now this is important. I mean, the yoke has just the 2 layers, and where you really want your warmth, trust me, is at the back of the neck. Now, I'm from Michigan, and we had some brutal winters in the Great Lakes region of the Midwest. And you could go and you could buy these garments that were partially or completely quilted, and it really does make every bit of difference. You just need that extra layer for warmth, and I loved them so much on the cold days. I used to steal my brother's shirts and cuddle up in them, and it just works a treat. So there we are. We're all ready now. Now this, if you're making a shirt from new, this would be the underside of your yoke. If you're adding a yoke padded to a shirt you've bought, then all you have to do now is turn in the seam allowances, and we'll work out a way to fell it onto the inside of the yoke. So before you press everything into place, we'll just try it out. And once again, use a rolled up towel or use a large tailor's ham so that you can test your pattern before you sew it in. And you can see and you can feel it as you're working that this is going to make a nice warm addition to your shirt, either new or one you already own.
Oh, that just looks super warm and super snug. You said a type of material that I'd never heard the name of before. Did you say Domette?
Yeah, that's right.
Can you explain?
So Domette, it comes in different weights. This is a thicker one. This is the one I used in the tutorial. But Domette typically is used in the chest canvas, where you would pad Domette to the canvas and then the horsehair, and this covers the more coarse horsehair. But it's a lighter weight. This is a heavier weight, and I think
so it's not what I would put in my quilts. Then it's not batting.
No.
All right.
I mean, you could use it, but it would make for a floppier. This is what you would. I think this is what you would use.
Oh yes, yeah.
It's more, it's more like a waffle. It holds its shape, where this is really fluid. You can't hold that up. That's not as obedient as this is. And I would imagine this is really lovely to use in quilting, because it just holds its shape.
Yeah. And we can get higher lofts as well, spongier lofts with the stuff inside.
Oh yeah.
So there's lots of different ones. But so if I went to a haberdashery, like myself, but I don't have that, I went in and say, can I have 2 meters of Domette? They would know. They won't look at me and go,
what?
Yes.
What? Yeah, but and like I said, this is a thicker one.
Yeah.
You would probably get a thinner one, and it comes in black or white, because if you were making a white garment, like a white dinner jacket versus a black dinner jacket, the architecture has to match.
I love it. Because I know when I'm out in cold weather, the head, this whole body, that's the part that gets cold quickly. So if you've got your yoke warm and you've got a scarf around and a hat, you're going to keep warm, aren't you? So having that padded there is going to be lovely.
It makes all the difference. And even a really good top coat, even a Crombie, they don't have that extra warmth in the back. So, you can have all this pile up in the front, with your scarves and everything, but that's not covered with coats, is it?
No.
And what you could do is you could quilt the stand on the inside as well. So you could quilt the stand and the yoke, and then that covers you, that covers you up to the collar.
Oh, that will be.
It really does work. It makes all the difference. Trust me.
I know I do. Yeah, definitely. Let's go back then to the flannel shirt, because there were so many pattern pieces to talk about. You said 17, so I would like to try and just sort of get some more technical stuff while we can on this, because in a way there's just so many wonderful things to talk about. The collar, how hard is that in itself as a principle, because of how many pieces there are, the collar, and what do they call that, the stand there?
So you have a stand and fall collar, that's what it's called.
Okay.
And the stand is a certain height, and then the fall, which is the pointy bit of the collar, that falls over the stand, and the fall should cover the stand and then some.
Right.
So you normally get like 1/4 of an inch overlap or something like that, but they're not tricky to do.
Oh.
You take your upper collar and your under collar, you sew them together and turn them out, and then you sandwich that in to the stand, and then you turn that out. Now that's not difficult.
Okay.
The tricky part comes in where then you have to take the stand and the fall, which are now together, and you have to sew that to the neck edge. So the neck edge is the forepart, the yoke, and the other forepart. So you have this very curvy section that you have to put the stand onto, and it all has to fit. And then it all has to turn around and meet the front edge. So that's the tricky bit. Right.
So this led me nicely in to Damien, because he said, and I've quoted it because it made me laugh, and I thought, good on him. Oh, I've done a few collars, so I've skipped a few steps, and I kind of want to link it to the pattern, because we've downloaded the free pattern and we're making the baby romper. You've made it, I'm still making it. We'll talk about that in a little while.
Okay.
And the instructions, I know it's a free pattern and we didn't pay for it, so that is to be taken into account, but they were a little bit confusing. Am I guessing that Damien probably looked at those instructions for the collar and thought, hey, I've done it a different way, and so therefore I'm skipping a few steps? Do you think he was right to do that?
Absolutely. I now know, because I've worked with one of those patterns and I've wrestled with it, the amount of language that you were given to help describe what you were about to do, that was rather disjointed to the picture. I couldn't work with that pattern. So I went off and I thought, I'm just going to do what I think is right here. I'm not surprised. Look, we're in week 7. If you're battling with a pattern, you know, this late in the game, and you know how misleading the language can be because you've wrestled with it. It's time to take it into your own hands.
Yeah.
I don't blame him at all.
And if we know that, because there were 17 pattern pieces, and we say if that collar is quite a challenge and you've done it before in your own way, then make it. I know it is a pattern challenge and you're being assessed on the pattern, but you're being assessed really on the final product, aren't you? So not how you put it together. That's
right. You are being judged on how accurately you match the pattern. That's it. And if the buttons line up correctly, and if the pattern's horizontally and vertically matched, that is the challenge.
Andrew's collar was a bit distorted. Was that right? Was it? I couldn't work it out. Was it because it didn't match, or?
Yeah, Andrew, I think he made an error when he was cutting. He didn't cut a pair of fronts, and I think it was the left forward part. Yeah, because it was left over right in a man's, isn't it? Yeah, I think the left forward part he cut, and it wasn't on grain. It was slight. And I looked at that front edge. I saw that first when they showed his garment on the mannequin, and the pattern was really riding up. You know, it wasn't level. It was really riding up. So what he had to do was to match. He had to force match the plaids.
Oh, right.
Because if he would have just lined everything up straight, he would have had an uneven hem, and nothing would have matched, and it would have looked really, really bad. So good for him. He made it match.
And then we had Serena's, apparently like something you could buy in a shop, and she came first. I mean, it looked amazing, didn't it?
It was perfectly accurate. Everything she did beautifully. I'm not sure if the undercollar pattern was smaller than the top collar, but the only thing I would say about Serena is that you could see the undercollar coming through, that it wasn't pressed to the back. But that's just such a minor point. I mean, everything, the buttonholes are perfectly vertical, everything matched. She's such an accurate technician.
Yeah, a lovely way of putting it. So we had Serena first, Damien second, Andrew third, Rebecca fourth, and then the two that really struggled, Raf and Fari, in sixth. So let's move on then. We've done our tutorials. Let's move on and just talk about the rest of them. A transformation challenge to make a garment for an adult of any gender using up to 5 scarves. All sorts of scarves on show. You had some woolen scarves. By the looks of it, you had some fabric scarves. So I think that must have been a free-for-all for people to try and get their scarves. But we had some interesting end results there, didn't we?
Oh, we did. I mean, I really enjoyed what Raf did, oddly enough, although they didn't rate that as a true transformation. But I liked how he took that, those very bold stripes and did a very simple, clean design. Serena chose scarves that didn't have much posture to them. So she struggled to make her...
sort of just...
it just flopped. My favorite transformation was Andrew, because I love I love the texture, and I love the fact that it was a good move for him to dismantle the scarf, to unweave the scarf, and then to use that as a lacing. And it added a wonderful, theatrical poise about it. And of course the colors, those complementary colors, the greens and the orange and the yellows, beautifully done. I think he did the best job with the brief.
I completely agree. I was gutted that he didn't get first with that. It'll be interesting to see what you think of Fari's. But Andrew's, yes, I thought there seemed to be more skills, I felt, that went into that.
Oh yes, yeah, definitely. There was drape, there was use of texture, there was use of color, and there was building something that actually was meant to be something. It looked like a garment that you could see on stage, where the others were just, they started to throw things at the mannequin and then it just kind of went for them. But Andrew seemed to have a purpose from the beginning.
What about Damien's? Because I don't know whether he fell into this category where the judges said it still looked like a scarf, but it still, I thought it still worked. They said up to 5 scarves. They didn't say you have to use 5 scarves. So I don't know whether he got penalised because of that, just because he only used 1 scarf, because it was almost like a poncho, wasn't it?
I didn't mind. He made a lovely little close fit tunic. I liked it. I didn't mind. And that's Damien, I loved it when he ran back to the haberdashery. He said, I wonder if there's some bows floating about or something like that. Oh, he makes me laugh. And of course, I love the fact that he got not only Patrick, but Esme to sing. However,
yes, well,
the intonation, I thought that was great.
And then Fari's, that lovely zebra style print, the shape of that.
I struggled with that one.
Yes.
I struggled to come to terms with that. It seemed to happen by accident, and then it worked on the mannequin, but it was slightly harem-y, slightly something. I don't know. It wasn't my favorite.
No. So Fari came first with that, and then Andrew second, and I think that's where it'll be interesting to see what the people say in the comments on that point of view. Rebecca third, Serena fourth, Raf fifth again. So in the bottom now for the second round, and then Damien sixth. So at the end of round 2, I think most of the nation were worrying about Raf.
Yeah, why did that go? What happened? Because he's normally so in command of his fabric. And he can twist it and turn it and move it around, and he can make some wonderful origami. He seems to, be what I called him a natural engineer. He knows what to do with cloth. So maybe it was just an off day. And it doesn't take much to shake one's confidence in this. And this is why, again, it's a shame it's not a cumulative competition, because one bad day can see you completely out of it. And
so we're going into the made to measure, kind of worrying about Raf. We kind of then think, well, is Fari safe because she came bottom on the first challenge, but has now come first on the second challenge? And as we know, there is a stronger weighting for the made to measure. So let's go on to the made to measure, the brief. Because I had to go back and double check the brief because I got a bit confused halfway through. It was a festive winter party dress. And then Joe went to say it could be something for a Christmas lunch or for a New Year's Eve party. So quite a big brief there, especially with the words festive and winter. So this is where I'm kind of thinking, well, were some of them more winter-based, yet some of them were more festive-based. Some of them were for an office party, some of them were for a Christmas lunch. So they were judging them on perhaps not being festive enough, but then they forgot the rest of the brief. So I think the brief was quite open. Oh,
I think so too. And I think that if you were if it was a Christmas lunch and you were a professional working woman, then you would go from your desk to a party. So fair enough. So I didn't find any problem with any of them meeting the brief. I thought they all met the brief because, as you say, it was wide open.
It's just whether the judges were a bit more blinkered with what they expected, with what to give. I don't know whether they were just thinking, well, that wasn't party enough. That's how I kind of felt.
Yeah, I mean, they loved Damien's and they loved Raf's, and they were at opposite sides of the spectrum, weren't they?
And they were brilliant. What did you think of Raf's and Damien's?
Oh, I think the judges are enamored by shiny things. That's what I think. I think they love shining. I mean, it was a good idea. It was a good move of Raf's to take a brocade and a gold and a metallic kind of thing, because those fabrics hold up very well. You can sculpture them, beautifully. You put a couple of box pleats in your home, you're home free, which is what he did. And the bow, in many ways, is just like a pleated, a smaller sculpture pleated. So everything caught the light, everything worked. It was fantastic. Serena used the same idea, with a shinier fabric, but if it was a properly coutured make, then she would have just interlined it with something which was not fusible. So she would have got the results she wanted. And
so she should have. So the interfacing was the wrong thing to do. It should have been properly
a non-fusible interlining.
So that's purely inexperience talking there, is it?
I would say, yeah, because and if you she said she block fused it. Now I don't know how she block fused it. If they had something there, a press, a large press that did it all in one. But if she decided to iron it on, and if she used steam, then that's never works, because the steam interrupts the fuse, the glue. It distorts it. If you use a dry iron, you have a better chance. But then you can't press it ever with steam, because it just lifts the glue away.
And her choice of fabric, was that just inexperience anyway? If you were experienced, would you just go, no satin, no satin?
Not for that. No, not for that dress. You would choose something else. You would choose a taffeta or a brocade like Ralph used.
So that's where Ralph
had posture.
I get you. So that's where Ralph's experience in his role, in his job, just
absolutely
choosing the right fabric, as you say, it got those.
That's just a no-brainer, really.
Now Rebecca. What about Rebecca? She's in kind. It sounds bad saying this, but she's kind of in the background, but she's there. She's ticking through, slowly developing. She's very, very accomplished, and then suddenly comes up with that number. What did you think of that?
What a prize. That was amazing. She held she picked the right overlay, and we've seen in this competition more than once, more than twice, how a lace overlay just is not effective. But she got the balance. The Duchess satin as an underlay, and then that beautiful lace. And she managed the parallel of the hemline of the skirt beautifully. The garment fit perfectly. Rebecca and Damien, their garments fit beautifully. Everyone else was way off the mark. I was going to say,
even with Raf's, was there at the top there, even with my inexperienced eye, there was a bit of sort of like a hot, it sort of lifted up. Was that?
It was a gape. There was a gaping there.
That's the word.
The thing is, it was interesting because it fit so tight at the waist that it lifted the bodice up almost too high. It looked like it needed, picking up at the neck, but I think it just caught at the waist. So there was something wrong there with the fit. With that one. Serena's was the most inaccurate fit. It was 2 sizes too big for her model, but it held its posture because it had this understructure of the fusible. But Damien and Rebecca's fit just like it just grew on her model. And I liked her offering the best
Yeah.
of anyone's, because it was just the purity of it. And it didn't, it doesn't have to shine and shout and squeak and bell and whistle. That just had such a lovely purity about it. Super job.
And we're talking about fit there. In our Unpicked show, Ting was talking about the fact that he noticed that he hardly saw the models. Then we have Fari, who doesn't use the model at all. It's difficult to see what was going on in that sort of made to measure, whether there was an issue with models or they didn't try it on as much, but some seemed to get the fit right, some didn't. So I don't know what was going on there at all.
That's an interesting point, because we don't know, do we?
No,
we
no.
don't know if the models were ready when the technicians were ready or whatever. But Fari she made the same mistake about the hip round with this dress that she did with her Chanel number. Same thing, just got that wrong.
Right.
Made that hip curve just outside, and there was a lot of gaping there. And of course she used a stretch velvet, and she made it, well, it was approximate to her model, wasn't it?
Yes.
But the fact that she could tie the whole thing together with a belt kind of saved it.
Indeed, so it certainly took the pressure off the fit.
Yes, yes.
Whereas clearly Rebecca got with her model and got the measurements correct. And Damien did too. I mean, they were some stunning darts and structure on the front, wasn't it?
The pattern that Damien chose was amazing, because it had that wonderful neck dart that went into the bust and then back into the waist. It just fit. I mean, that was such a winner.
Yeah.
And it like I said, if we were to look at the two best garments, which would have been Rebecca's and Damien's, those were the two finest. Both fit the brief, it was a made to measure challenge, and it was made to measure. So that was met. But Damien's had more complex details with the fit. And then the fact that center front zip had to also go in the mix, which is about 3/4 inch stripe that goes straight down. Yeah, so he that was I didn't who thought that would happen? Who thought Damien would pull that out?
Well, I think we did early on. Remember the first episode when he was a bit of a, his personality was coming through. He did do well in the pattern challenge. He didn't do well in the transformation. And then he made that dress with the eyelets in the made to measure. I think that was week 1, wasn't it? And you were like, you said he's got some skills there.
Yes, that's right. I thank you for that reminder. Absolutely. So we think he's a bit of a lark, and he doesn't read the directions, and he's a bit of a bull in the haberdashery shop. But who knows?
Yeah.
It is interesting, and it'll be. We'll just have to wait and see. But I think
he was using wool on that dress, wasn't it? I presume it was wool.
Yes, I think it was a stretch wool with a pink overcheck, and everything matched.
I know, it's stunning, absolutely stunning. You got some confidence there. I mean, he whether he's made that dress before or whether he's practiced, he just seemed, the whole editing was done to make us go wow for that. And then Esme went wow, didn't she, on her judging of it?
Yeah, she sure did.
So I think we were all gobsmacked when he then didn't get Garment of the Week.
Yeah. I like I said, they're mesmerized by shiny things, Stuart.
What about Fari's? We were just talking about that, the wraparound. The hole on the front, just missed that as she was sewing it. So wasn't it on that seam there?
It was the pleat.
Yeah.
And she said, I have to use a lot of pins, and she had all her little clips and everything. So what happened when she sewed it? Well, she would have had to take her clips out to get things into the machine, and that pleat would have just slipped up, and she just missed sewing it. So it left a hole there.
And happens to us all, that, doesn't it? A common, easy mistake. Let's talk about Andrew and his dress and the fabric. Was the fabric the thing that scuppered him from the beginning?
I think so.
Right.
I really do. Cotton velvet is such a tricky fabric, and having a back zip.
Okay.
Two things. A fitted dress, which means darts, so you have to have these parallel vertical lines. The shaping has to be really accurate, otherwise it ripples, it catches the light. So any small flaw is just going to shout at you.
Right.
And yeah, my heart broke for him on that, particularly when he put the zip in last, and it didn't line up.
Tell me about the organza. I'm not sure fully what he was trying to do there. He wanted the organza bows, you know, as a flourish at the bottom of each arm.
As a lovely decoration. So he had this semicircle cuff, and then I did a little study on it because I thought I liked the idea. I liked the idea of the, you know, this plush velvet and then this springy organza. I liked it, and he brought this isn't organza, this is tulle, but he presented this bow which was really floppy, and he said, "Oh, this is this
like
is
that."
And I thought, well, gee, Andrew, what if you took that and just doubled it back on itself and then opened it up? You know, it's a lot more posture. He could have got away with it just by doubling it. But instead, did you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead, he, so there we go. It's, you know, even something as floppy as tulle, it might have worked a bit better. And then when it fell,
when it fell off, my heart sank.
Yeah.
And I could see the way the editing was going at that point, because it suddenly went very dramatic, didn't it?
And everyone went, oh,
yeah.
And even the music.
Yeah.
I think that the snow falls, and there went the bow.
Yeah. And at that point, I just thought, I couldn't call who was going, because Andrew was not even in my head for going, because he was second and third. Second in the first round, third. So he wasn't even in a discussion that it was potential for him to go. So when suddenly this edit appeared with the music and the dramaticness, I just went, they're going to send him home.
Sadly. But it was between him and Fari, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And if Fari would have went, it would have then, because we kind of know that maybe Rebecca and Andrew are, maybe they will be next. They just don't, you know, they're not measuring. They don't have the flair. They don't have the gusto. They don't have the, I don't know. It's just, there's a disparity there. So that would have made it then, to, you know, between Serena and Raf, and maybe not as interesting. Because Fari is, like you say, she can be first and she can be last, so she's full of surprises. And so maybe having her still in the process makes it a more interesting.
Very good point. But let's not forget, she still made some wonderful garments, and they are all so very, very good, aren't they? Considering, well, let's go back to that, the shirt, the lumberjack shirt, 17 pattern pieces in 4.5 hours. What did you say to me on our little WhatsApp chat? You said minimum.
That's not enough time. Nowhere near enough time.
Minimum 6 hours, I think you said, wasn't it?
Yeah. But I wasn't sure about the gauntlet and how that would work. And, you know, just to get all the, you know, the buttons, the buttonholes in on the cuffs and the center front, and to get the buttons sewn on. And I think there was a episode where they were using a button attachment to sew the buttons on. And all I could think of was they're going to have to do that at the end. It's just too much. And I think that's why Raf chose to do the yoke on the bias, because that would have cut out some of the time-consuming matching. You see?
Yeah.
And so, but it worked the other way for him, unfortunately.
Yeah. It was an enjoyable episode, though. When we look back at some of the garments from that, there were some cracking ones all round, weren't there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, even the, you know, the lumberjack shirt, it was nice to see the disparity between
Yeah.
absolute cleanliness with Serena and some of the things didn't go quite well, and Raf's problems and Andrew's problems, and the transformation, I think that gave Andrew something to be truly proud of, right?
Yeah.
And then everybody loves a sparkly frock. So
Yes.
leads into next week, which is going to be really interesting.
Isn't it? The quarterfinals.
Well, yeah, here we are. But what's the musical? They said we're going to have some music. What does that have to?
I think the musical was. I think it was Dreamgirls. I've never seen it. I'm not sure what it is, what theme it has. I'm sure viewers can tell us in the comments. And the movie is Dirty Dancing.
Okay, so the circular skirt, right? The fitted bodice and the circular skirt for twirling, and
so
okay.
That could be the pattern challenge, maybe.
Well, okay. It's a lot of fabric. That's a lot of fabric, isn't it? I always remember Catherine's dress when she made a circular skirt. Do you remember that? It didn't quite work well on the
yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
monster skirt. Oh, well, we'll
indeed. Well, stay tuned. Talking about patterns, let me give you an update. So everyone, I will tell everyone first, I had to Zoom Carol today to help because I couldn't quite understand the instructions. My brain just, it just goes to show how sometimes, I mean, this is me without a time limit, but reading a pattern instruction, how you can not misinterpret, but how you can interpret or how you can't interpret. You just can't work it out sometimes. So just imagine what it's like on the show when you've only got 4.5 hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
So so this is my front.
Very nice. Oh, it's a jolly print. I like that.
You can just my stitch just a bit lower.
Yeah, not bad at all.
But I was conscious of the back because you're stitching in the ditch to catch the back facing, aren't you?
That's right.
And,
yes.
And there wasn't much to play with there, and I was worried that I was going to go off. So
yeah, I had the same problem. In fact, I thought I'm just going to turn this up and sew it by hand. I can do it quicker.
Yeah, because you can see there I was so conscious. I've gone really into the facing. Look, I'm probably half an inch in, but I still managed to have it, on there. So that bit was difficult, and then my brain just couldn't compute the folding over of the waist to put the channel in. So you had to fold it over, and then.
That's right. But Stuart, I found that difficult as well because the instructions, the instructions weren't clear. And also the instructions, the illustration on the instruction don't look like the pattern piece.
Yeah, that's completely
so it doesn't have the, it's not that concave.
When I was reading the instruction, I thought the pattern diagram looked like the top was just folded over.
Folded over, yes.
And then it's the separate piece. It's that long piece that you put on top.
That's right. And also in the illustration, it looked like, you just turn it over maybe an inch.
Yeah, that's right.
In proportion, it looked like just a small fold.
Indeed.
So,
but I'm now on the hem of the legs. So I've folded the hem over and I folded it over twice. And then I'm up to that really weird bit with that.
Oh, you've got to put those, you'll sew the facings on.
So
yeah.
But I got there, and with your help I got there, and I'm still enjoying it. So if you are learning, please don't be put off by it. Even though I know we're saying we're struggling with it, go for it. We're here to help. You can comment below. It's a free pattern, so we must take that into account. Thank you for putting it up there, and go for it. And we'll sew them all together. But it does make you realise that they are incredible sewers to be on TV, have cameras in their faces, have Joe trying to talk to them and have fun with this interaction and sew these garments in 4.5 hours. This is probably taking me 10 or 12 hours so far.
No, I mean, you bring up an excellent point. When the pressure is on them, and they have climatized to the situation, haven't they? They're now, our quarterfinalists are used to it, and they're handling it beautifully.
Very well put. Very well put. I've loved our conversation as always. Oh, I'm going to miss it. We've got the quarterfinals, semi-final, and that's it. The final three, 8, 9,
and 10. 3 more. Well, we'll have to come up with something else to amuse ourselves, when it's over.
Now, if you are enjoying the Sewing Bee, you'll be pleased to know, viewers, that the BBC have released all seasons on iPlayer. So if you want to go and check out how the transformation round has developed, do so, because the early seasons have a transformation challenge where they were literally transforming a garment up by adding a pocket or adding something. So you can see how the transformation has developed. So that might be a fascinating one. And the early seasons only had like 4 or 5 programs too. It wasn't like we have now with 10 episodes, 10 weeks. So it really has developed lots. So go onto the BBC iPlayer and check them out. Maybe we could do past seasons too in the future, you never know. So until next week, till the quarterfinal, happy sewing, and we'll see you soon, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.